Violet Pemberton didn't leave a goodbye. Just a room that felt wrong, too tidy, too deliberate. The sort of stillness that means a woman left quickly and didn't expect to return. Her gowns are untouched, but the riding habit, the one garment meant for speed rather than society, that's missing. And here, the thing she meant to keep hidden. Midnight, Conservatory, come alone. I heard footsteps in the corridor. His, and I felt the room steady. Two sets of eyes notice what one set might forgive.
Miss West.
We crossed the threshold together. From that moment on, the case belonged to both of us.
You're listening to the Casebook of Maud West, Episode 6, The Heiress of Hampshire, inspired by Britain's lady detective of the early 1930s. Before Maud stood in that too-tidy bedroom, the case began with 2 telegrams, delivered to 2 different desks, summoning 2 investigators onto the same train.
My telegram arrived just after breakfast. Thick paper, expensive ink, and urgency disguised as politeness. Violet Pemberton, only daughter of a Hampshire family with more acres than imagination, had vanished 3 nights ago. Her mother wanted her found quietly. The words sat on the page like a threat. A first-class compartment on the 11:30 from Victoria was reserved in my name. 1 seat, no room for questions.
Mine arrived an hour later at the yard, unsigned, cautious, and plainly not from the family. It urged police involvement, despite household reluctance. Those are rarely comfortable words. The file carried a note, 11:30 Victoria First Class.
Victoria was a blur of steam and impatience. I found the compartment, C4, empty. For a moment I thought I might have London and my thoughts to myself.
Miss West.
Inspector, 3 hours to Hampshire, in a first-class box, with a man I had been diligently avoiding since the Ashford affair.
3 hours opposite the one woman who makes my work sharper, and my judgment less certain. Not the ideal arrangement for a missing persons inquiry.
As the countryside rolled past, Maud and Flynn compared facts long before they compared feelings. By the time the train reached Hampshire, the case had already begun to close around them both.
Pemberton Hall rose out of the fields like a verdict. Grand, symmetrical, and just a little too pleased with itself. Inside, carpets were thick, curtains heavy, and the air carefully cooled by generations of disapproval. Violet's mother received me in a drawing room that smelled of tea and strain. She did not cry. She issued instructions. Her daughter would never run. Her fiancé was exactly the sort of man she needed. Any suggestion otherwise was modern nonsense. Her voice said certainty. Her hands said fear.
While Maud endured the dowager's composure, I spoke with the people who polish the silver and open the doors. Servants notice everything, especially the things they are never asked about. They told me Violet had been restless. They told me the fiancé had a temper when he thought no one was watching. They told me the American cousin made her laugh more than was strictly seemly. No one admitted to knowing anything. Everyone knew something.
The family spoke in careful phrases. The staff spoke in hints. But the woman who saw Violet most clearly was neither relation nor servant. She was the one paid to keep her company.
Eleanor. Companion, chaperone, and I suspect the closest thing Violet had to a friend, sat like a woman bracing for blame. She cared for Violet deeply, in the steady way women in service often come to care for those they're responsible for. Hours shared, tempers weathered, the quiet work of understanding someone others assume they already know. She told me Violet liked books more than balls, arguments more than small talk. She spoke of an engagement Violet described as stepping into a life written in someone else's hand. When the American cousin arrived, Violet brightened. Talk of travel, work, of a life where she chose more than the colour of her gown. The fiancé, Eleanor said carefully, talked about Violet as one talks about an inheritance. Valuable, important, but ultimately something to be managed. Eleanor had not betrayed Violet. She had also not stopped her. Guilt sat on her shoulders as if it had been fitted there.
While Maud listened to the woman who understood Violet's heart, Flynn listened to the men who claimed to know what was best for her future.
The cousin went first. On paper, he was harmless. A visiting relation with a good tailor, an unfinished degree from Princeton, and the sort of grin that suggests life has mostly cooperated with him. But entitlement leaves fingerprints just as clearly as guilt. He claimed he and Violet talked ideas, a harmless phrase. Unless one knows how dangerous ideas can become, to a family determined to keep its daughters ornamental. I asked how often they met. His answer wandered. Too many hedges for a man with nothing to hide. He spoke of books, of letters from America, of a life where Violet's mind mattered more than her pedigree. When I mentioned the missing riding habit, he shifted just once, a small, involuntary movement of the eyes toward the west lawn, a direction no innocent man should be thinking about. I pressed him harder, not out of suspicion alone, but because men like him often expect the law to treat them gently, if they speak with enough charm. He admitted Violet dreamed of leaving Hampshire. He admitted he'd encouraged it. But when I asked whether he planned to help her run, his voice cracked at the edges. Guilt speaks quietly. Fear speaks louder. He spoke both languages fluently. By the end of the interview, I no longer saw a conspirator. I saw a young man who believed he might have watched a woman reach for freedom and fall because he didn't reach far enough. The fiancé was another matter entirely. He greeted me with the sort of politeness that makes you feel as though you've interrupted a man mid-thought, and all his thoughts are about himself. He sat perfectly straight, coat precisely pressed, hair arranged as if even grief must obey him. He described Violet as nervous but devoted, a phrase that always means the speaker valued obedience more than understanding. I asked where he was the night she vanished. He answered too quickly, the well-rehearsed tone of a man who has practiced what innocence ought to sound like. When I mentioned the note, "Midnight, Conservatory, come alone," his jaw twitched. A small thing, but the truth often lives in small things. I let the silence stretch. Men like him hate silence, and it forces their stories to stand on their own legs. He's barely managed it. He spoke then of duty, of maintaining order, of how Violet was impressionable. A word used by men who believe a woman's thoughts require supervision. When I asked what he would have done, if Violet had left of her own choosing, really left, he inhaled sharply as though the very idea had bruised something fragile inside him. His eyes hardened. Not mourning, possession. I took note of his hands. They tightened on the arm of the chair with the controlled fury of a man, accustomed to winning every argument by simply refusing to lose it. He claimed he slept soundly that night. Everything about him said otherwise. By the time I closed my notebook, two truths had settled. The cousin looked like a man who failed to save someone he cared for. The fiancé looked like a man who believed the world had failed him, and someone needed to answer for it. Both can be dangerous, but only one was dangerous to Violet Pemberton.
With suspicions forming on both sides of the house, Maud and Flynn stepped outside to a rose garden designed for appearances and a conversation that could not be held under anyone's roof.
The drawing room was suffocating. The rose garden, at least, was honest. Roses never pretend to be anything but what they are. I told Flynn what Eleanor had shared. Violet's dread of the engagement, her excitement after the cousins' arrival, her talk of leaving, and the way hope and fear pulled at her in equal measure.
I told Maud what the men had not quite said. The cousins' half-spoken plans for escape, the fiancé's indignation at the very idea that Violet might choose otherwise, and how both men circled her absence. Like a question they were afraid to answer.
She was meant to meet someone in the conservatory. The note makes that clear.
Then that's where we begin. In daylight, with both of us present.
We agreed. A small victory in itself. For a moment, the conversation drifted too near the Ashford case and the risks we had both taken there. We didn't name it. We didn't need to.
The rose garden offered honesty in petals and thorns, but the house itself held tighter secrets, the kind that linger in hallways, in whispers, and in the uneasy quiet of a family guarding its reputation. To learn what Violet feared, Maud and Flynn would have to walk Pemberton Hall at dusk, a place where footsteps echo louder when the truth is trying not to be heard.
Evening settled over Pemberton Hall, the way dust settles over old grievances. Quietly, inevitably, without asking permission. Flynn and I separated for an hour to walk the house in different directions. Sometimes a building reveals more when you don't approach it as a pair. I moved through the west corridor, where sunlight died early, and portraits of Pembertons long gone stared with the same practiced indifference. Old families are good at painting over cracks, less good at containing what seeps through them. A maid passed me with her head lowered. When I asked whether she had seen Violet on the night she vanished, she hesitated just long enough to be telling. Then she said only, "The young mistress wasn't herself that evening, ma'am," and hurried away as if she'd said too much. In these houses, truth walks on tiptoe. Fear sprints.
I took the servants' hall, best place to hear what people truly think, once they believe you're not listening. Two footmen spoke in low voices near the pantry. They stopped when they saw me, but guilt has a way of hanging in the air like smoke. One muttered that the master's temper had been poor these past days. The other added that Violet had spent more time outdoors than usual. As if the walls were pressing in, he said. I didn't need Maud beside me to know what that meant. I asked about the conservatory. They exchanged a look, the kind people share when the truth is too large to fit into a single answer. One finally managed, "Best not to linger there after dark, Inspector." Superstition, perhaps. Or memory wearing a disguise.
I found Flynn in the long gallery. He leaned against a window frame, hands in his pockets, eyes narrowed as if weighing something that refused to balance. "You heard something?"
Enough to know the house is lying. And people also.
He said it quietly, as if not to disturb the varnished ancestors on the walls. But the words stayed with me. Pemberton Hall was beautiful, in the same way a locked jewellery box is beautiful, polished, guarded, and hiding something you are not meant to see.
We compared what we'd gathered, the hesitations, the glances, the unfinished sentences. A pattern was forming like a shape beneath frost glass. Violet hadn't simply left. She had fled, and whatever drove her into the night was something she believed could reach her indoors. I suggested we examine the conservatory again. Not at dusk, but after the house settled into its evening rituals.
If Violet agreed to meet someone there at midnight, she trusted the darkness more than the daylight.
Or she trusted no one, and midnight was the only hour left to her.
There was nothing more to learn from the house. Buildings can only whisper so loudly. We stepped outside. The conservatory glowed faintly across the lawn. A glass house of shadows waiting to decide what it would reveal. And as the last of the daylight thinned, I felt it. The shift in the air. that comes just before the truth stops hiding.
By nightfall, the house had yielded its hints, its warnings, its contradictions. But the answers Violet sought had not been hidden behind drawing room doors or whispered in servant corridors. They waited beneath glass and shadow in the conservatory where midnight promises are kept and broken, and where a man with too much to lose stood ready to shape the story in his favor.
I returned to the conservatory before dusk, when the light turns every pane into a mirror, and every shadow into a possibility. I meant to examine the side door first, but I wasn't alone. He stood near the archway. The fiancé, watching me. He said nothing. Some men think silence makes them formidable. In his case, it only made his intent easier to read. He moved towards me. 3 measured steps, each one claiming the space between us. I told him I was here at his future mother-in-law's request, that we were trying to find the truth, that hindering the inquiry would do him no good. He continued moving, shortening the space between us. For a brief moment, I saw how Violet might have seen him that last night. A man who believed affection entitled him to obedience.
I reach the side door and take in the scene in a single breath. Maud, the fiancé. Too close. Too quiet. His posture coiled like a man preparing to reclaim what he thinks he's owed. I step fully into the room and say, sharp and deliberate, "Sir, step away from her." Not shouted, but edged in steel. A command, not a request. He freezes, startled only because he didn't expect anyone else to witness the moment. His hands clench, his jaw locks. I take another step backward. Do not take another step toward Miss West. This time, he understands exactly who I am addressing, and why.
Flynn's voice cut through the glass and greenery like a crack of ice. The fiancé halted, not from conscience, from calculation. He stepped back. 2 careful paces, not enough to suggest respect, just enough to suggest second thoughts.
I told him there would be formal questions later. He bristled at the idea of being treated like any other man, under suspicion. He still said nothing. His silence did the talking for him.
Only when he'd left the conservatory did the room feel large enough to breathe in again.
He didn't come here to assist you.
No. He came to influence what would be found.
Or to prevent it.
Either way, whatever happened to Violet didn't begin with a struggle. It began with a man who couldn't bear being refused.
With tempers exposed and intentions laid bare, Maud and Flynn returned to the conservatory at first light. This time, not for a confrontation, but for what the night had left behind.
By day, the conservatory looked almost innocent. Ironwork picked out in sunlight, palms behaving themselves in their pots. In my experience, rooms seldom look guilty. It's the details that do. Near the base of an iron support, behind a fern too heavy to shift for dusting, I saw it. A dried stain, the colour of old plum. Too dark for water, too far from soil.
Blood. Not much, but enough. Side door's been used recently. Look, smear on the handle.
And here, a scuff on the tile. Something, or someone, was moved in a hurry. The picture sharpened. Violet met someone here. There was violence, and she did not leave by choice.
The local constables had pronounced the room clear. They often do when the wallpaper is expensive enough. I ordered the search widened beyond the formal gardens, out to the places estates prefer not to remember they own.
He didn't need to explain why. We both knew where the truth tends to wash up when the house has tried to rinse it away.
What the grounds gave back ended the question of whether Violet Pemberton had run away.
They found her near an old drainage ditch, half choked with reeds and neglect. Violet Pemberton. No longer missing. Only gone. The marks on her arms spoke of hands that held too tightly. The condition of her clothes spoke of a struggle that tried to be hidden and failed. Whatever story the family wanted, the land told its own.
She looked younger than her 22 years. Death tends to do that. It strips away the performance. I stood there and thought about running. How Violet tried and failed. How many women never get as far as the attempt.
With Violet found and the conservatory evidence laid bare, all that remained was to match a single pair of guilty hands to what the land and tile had already confessed.
What followed was procedure. Statements taken, alibis tested, contradictions left to collapse under their own weight. The cousin's half-truths unravelled into a full confession of planned escape. He had meant to meet Violet, but she never showed. Eleanor's account fixed the time of Violet's last known movements. The conservatory evidence fixed the place of her last stand. The fiancé's silence fixed everything else.
He could not explain the blood or the marks on her arms or why a neighbour heard raised voices from the direction of the glass house at precisely the hour the note mentioned. He talked of duty and disobedience, of how Violet worked herself into hysterics, of how he had tried to steady her. The law has other words for that. We arrested him before dinner. The shock in the drawing room was not that someone had killed Violet, but that someone of his standing was being treated as though it mattered.
I said very little. Some days, silence is the only accurate statement.
On paper, the case was over, but cases seldom end on paper. Maud and Flynn still had a train to catch, and one last conversation the Hampshire heir had not been able to hold.
The compartment felt smaller on the way back to London. The work was done. The weight was not.
The report will say altercation, fall, fatal injuries. It won't say she died for wanting to choose her own life.
Reports rarely have room for that kind of accuracy.
We went over the facts one last time, more out of habit than necessity. The cousin would carry his guilt. The companion would carry her grief. The fiancé would carry a verdict, and Maud would carry all of them in her casebook.
For a while, we simply listened to the rails. It was Flynn who broke the quiet.
I shouldn't have had to follow you to the conservatory.
You didn't. That was your choice.
I told her the truth, that I had not gone there. As an officer of the law, but as a man who had grown very tired of watching her walk alone into rooms like that. No decoration, just fact.
He wasn't telling me where I could and couldn't go. He was stating a change in his own arithmetic. It's a small distinction, and an important one. We're already compromised, you know.
Compromised. That is a revealing description.
No declarations, no promises. Just an understanding that colleagues is no longer a sufficient word. Outside, London drew closer. Inside, nothing was settled. But nothing was quite the same either. Victoria Station greeted us with its usual impersonality. Porters calling, steam rising, London insisting the world keep moving no matter who was lost in it. We stepped out onto the platform together, but slowed in the same moment. Two people trying not to make significance out of a goodbye.
You'll put your report in order, I suppose.
And you'll put yours where it will trouble the right people. We have our ways. He almost smiled. the sort a man allows himself when he thinks no one is looking.
Maud, if you need anything, documents, access, an escort to a conservatory, you'll send word.
If I require rescuing, Inspector, I'll let you know well in advance. But I warn you, I seldom schedule my peril so neatly. He didn't argue. That has always been one of his strengths. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved, not out of hesitation, but because some conversations continue even after the words stop.
Take care, Maud.
It was not a command nor a plea. Just a fact he had decided to state aloud. You as well, Inspector. He tipped his hat. I turned toward the cabs. Behind me, I heard his footsteps fade into the morning bustle. Measured, steady, unmistakable. London swallowed him. London welcomed me back. Whatever we were becoming, it would not be decided on a train platform.
The next morning, London went about its business. Maud West returned to hers, with one more file in the drawer and one more question she could not quite put away.
Back at my desk, the ink on Violet's story was already drying, but the questions she raised were not finished with me. I wrote the report for my private files, listing the facts as plainly as the law requires. A young woman who saw marriage as erasure. A cousin who offered escape but not enough courage. A companion torn between loyalty and fear. A fiancé who mistook possession for affection. Yet the detail that lingered was not one I could write. It was the imagined look on Violet's face before she chose the conservatory over compliance. It made me think about risk, about how far I am willing to go for truth, and how far I am willing to let someone walk beside me while I go there. Somewhere between Hampshire and London, Flynn stopped being an obstacle and became an unanswered question in my own arithmetic. I intend to keep my freedom, whatever it costs. And as for Flynn, I must accept that he is becoming a fixture in my work, not by invitation, by persistence, and by a sense of responsibility that edges dangerously close to something else. I will decide what to do with that later, when the city gives me time to think. Until the next inquiry, I remain Maud West, private inquirer, amateur philosopher, and reluctant optimist.
You have been listening to the Casebook of Maud West. Tonight's inquiry has drawn to a close, leaving shadows lifted, truths revealed, and one more page added to the files of London's most determined private inquirer. Subscribe and join us again for another tale of intrigue, intuition, and the quiet courage that carries Maud West through every case.